Alrighty. Welcome to the live. Just please, as usual, type in the chat very quickly. Can you hear me well? Is this microphone properly on? And please quickly just confirm very briefly to me, is the microphone on? Can you hear me well? And then we'll get started immediately. Yeah, in the hope that the microphone's already working, I want to welcome all of you. Again, please just quickly type in and let me know whether you can hear me properly. And then we can start. As usual, yes, great. Thank you, Mark. Thanks for letting me know. And I know that I will see you tomorrow morning. I have that in my calendar that tomorrow morning we will be talking about your My Tinnitus Club subscription and you will get a personal introduction. Thank you for letting me know that you can hear me. Then we can start the live. I want to welcome all of you very warmly to another Wednesday afternoon live Q&A session. As usual, you're obviously very welcome to submit all your questions, to put them in the chat. I have a few things that I brought with me today that I'm keen to talk about. 5 points towards tinnitus habituation in the year 2025. A few ideas of, hey, Karen, thanks for coming on as well. It was lovely to see you yesterday and looking forward to having you in the buddy system meeting tomorrow as well. Mark and Karen from the club are in here. That's fantastic. Welcome, guys. Very happy to see you here. Yeah, so I have 5 different strategies that I've selected and I want to share with you guys today. Then we also have some stuff. I'm just looking up at my screen because you guys are down here. Finally, I made it onto my iPhone camera again. And I am looking up to my screen because there were also some questions that you guys put into the community tab on my channel. So it is quite something that I wanted to talk about. I will see. Okay, so we had a poll 3 days ago. I did a poll with you guys, and my questions were, what are your biggest challenges with tinnitus right now? And 23% of you guys said falling asleep. 14% said concentrating during the day. 45% said managing stress. And 18% said understanding treatment options. So I think it's very clear what we want to be talking about today as well. So hi, Daniel. It's basically a community meet here today. Love it. Very cool. So we're basically going to talk about these 5 different strategies that I want to share with you, and also a little bit of stress management, which seems to be very, very important for you guys. And of course, when it comes to tinnitus, managing stress is one of the core things that we can and should be doing in order to, get to habituation. So stress management is something that's very, very important in our tinnitus overall management. And yeah, so any questions that you guys might have, just type it down here into the chat. I've already shared the Linktree resources with you guys. So if you click on that, there'll be a few resources that you'll be able to consult throughout the live session. I just pinned the comment so that you always have it. If you want to go to that and check out the resources that we have in there, you can do so. Alrighty. And while I'm waiting for the first questions, I am going to dive right in and going to briefly talk you through the different strategies that I have written down for today. I'll just drink a little bit of water before I start. So the different strategies that I have today is, one is out of acceptance and commitment therapy called original versus amplified pain. The second one is also from acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's called diffusion. The third one is understanding your tinnitus cycle. It's very, very important when we talk about how to habituate and how to get better in the year 2025, that you understand the tinnitus cycle and what actually happens when you deal with tinnitus, and it's something very important. And then we talk about one more thing, which is stress management. That's key point number 4. And then the final point is adjusting and managing your sleep, because a lot of people have been suggesting that sleep is something that's very dear to them as well. I mean, sleep is dear to anyone who wants to be relatively relaxed and rested. And if you want to have a relatively normal life, it's of course essential that we get enough rest and relaxation throughout the night. So, alrighty. If you guys don't have any questions right now, that you obviously, again, at all times can simply put down here in the chat. You can also send little emojis, say hi all, and you can obviously post your question in the chat. I will try to answer them as much as I can. And then I want to start with my first point, which is a concept out of acceptance and commitment therapy called original versus amplified pain. And what it means is very simple. It means that often when we have majorly a psychological distress, so like emotional pain, anxiety, anger, then that of course is something where a lot of resources are mobilized in the body, right? You all know the fight or flight instinct, and of course, like the more resources you use, you don't have unlimited resources. You will get drained eventually. You know, the hard day of work is difficult and exhausting. So it is quite normal that you will be exhausted at some point, and your resources might deplete quicker. So original versus amplified pain is basically a concept from acceptance and commitment therapy, meaning that it is very, very important that we understand that there is original pain from what we're dealing with. So for example, if we go towards looking at insomnia, the original pain of insomnia is, you know, not feeling great because you haven't slept well. That's the original pain of insomnia. And then the amplified pain of insomnia is the tossing and turning at night, the thoughts the whole day, I can't perform, I can't function, and how will the next night be? And all of that emotional distress is all of the amplified pain. And there are studies that suggest that do really, really important work on the effectiveness of acceptance and commitment therapy and how original and amplified pain actually work. And these studies actually suggest that in some cases, amplified pain, so not the original pain, can be 80% of what you're suffering from, right? So in the case of insomnia, let's say, well, yeah, not sleeping well is very, very uncomfortable, but the original pain, like how we feel, how our bodies feel when we haven't slept well, is about 20%, depending on the case. Of course, it's different for everyone, but the amplified pain can be up to 80%, right? So the fretting around not being able to sleep, the psychological distress of not being able to function and how your body feels, and that constant cycle of reactivity, that we call amplified pain. And this amplified pain can be up to 80%. And in tinnitus, the original pain is the experience of a sound that is tinnitus itself. And the amplified pain is, well, anxiety, frustration, the fear, and the story we tell ourselves about our tinnitus. Like, this will never go away, this will always be this bad, I will never get better, and so on and so forth, right? So it's really, really important to recognize that there's a big difference between original pain and the amplified pain. And also, if we go towards the fact that tinnitus is, in fact, more of a psychophysiological issue than an auditory issue, because I got an email today again, oh, it's exhausting me. I get tired as well. Today, I have a little bit of a tired day. It was a lot of work yesterday. I had a late coaching session with someone from New Zealand, so time zone differences made it a late coaching session. So I got a little bit tired today as well. And then sometimes I get these emails like, you know, I send out these emails for these live Q&As in the morning. And then there's like an email, hey, today we have our live Q&A, join us, la, la, la. And then I get like an email back in all caps, there is no cure for tinnitus. And I'm like, Yeah, I know. I have tinnitus for 15 years, and it's like, yeah, it's tiring, right? And it's normal, right? You're fighting against the windmills because people who are screaming around, they have cures and they know exactly what to do. Um, they actually don't know exactly what to do, and they're just selling you like expensive products and claim that they know what they do, but they actually don't. And then other people just really don't understand what this is all about, and that it's not about curing or solving tinnitus completely, but that it is about a way of living well despite tinnitus, so your brain can get used to the tinnitus, to the effect that tinnitus no longer bothers you. So it's not about curing tinnitus or completely eliminating tinnitus. It's about going from bothersome to non-bothersome tinnitus, which honestly, if you ask me, like, I mean, I'm living my life pretty much as I would without tinnitus. No, it's not entirely true, but mostly. So, but yeah, this is a tiring work. That's a tiring sector. It's tiring thing to be in, but I still love it. And yeah, I'm very devoted. And I just wanted to share with you this first point is amplified versus original pain. So it is very likely that the amplified pain from acceptance and commitment therapy, so the amount of difficulty and the amount of anxiety, frustration, and overreaction that you have towards your tinnitus is causing a lot of the distress. And then we get into that a little bit later. But the more distress you have, the more, of course, the stress is directly linked to your tinnitus, and your brain says, "Oh, this distress, this anxiety is really bad," or like, "I'm not sleeping because of my tinnitus." And of course, if that's the way you feel about your tinnitus, then it's very difficult not to be tuning in all the time, right? It's very difficult for your brain to not think that this is something that you have to get rid of, otherwise you can't really live your life properly anymore, right? So think about it this way. Um, and why I wanted to start with this is because when we know what our original pain is and what our amplified pain is, then we can start to know, okay, what causes my amplified pain? The original pain is simply the grief and the loss that we don't have traditional silence anymore, right? I mean, what's silence anyways? And I've said in a few videos that I don't believe in silence anyways. It's a concept. It's a state of calm and relaxation that you can absolutely achieve despite tinnitus. And I'll share this with you guys very, very excited about this podcast episode on Friday that I did yesterday with Glenn Schweitzer from Rewiring Tinnitus. It was a really, really cool reflection on, because first of all, it's going to be my 100th podcast episode. I'm very proud of this. And 5 years, pretty much exactly 26th of January, 2020, I released my first ever podcast episode. And since then, it's been 100 episodes. And I think it shows my devotion and my eagerness to make a difference in the tinnitus community. Although I'm not a big promiser of herbal or eardrop relief or hearing aids or something, but I'm someone who tries to help people habituate in the long run and get better with their tinnitus while tinnitus is still there and not having to fight it constantly, right? So to going to non-bothersome tinnitus. And yeah, Glenn and we did this very, very cool conversation talking about hyperacusis, talking about how he habituated very quickly to his tinnitus, why you can absolutely be in a state of deep relaxation despite the presence of your tinnitus. And yeah, that's going to release on Friday. That's going to be really cool. It's releasing here on YouTube, but also obviously on all major podcast platforms. So if you do click on the link that I shared up there in the chat, you will also see that you can listen to the podcast on all major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, and so on and so forth. Anyways, so I wanted to talk about amplified and original pain, because when you can understand your amplified pain better, then it is a lot easier for you to, find out, okay, what is the original pain? So like, experiencing tinnitus. And then what is my amplified pain that keeps coming back in the same ways over and over and over again, right? And understanding my amplified pain is very closely linked to understanding my thoughts, reactions, and feelings. So this psychophysiological cycle that I have around my tinnitus, all the resistance that drains me, and when I am drained and empty because of my tinnitus, then we really need to solve the problem, right? Or do we? Yeah. So that's basically saying, You recognize when you add layers of amplified pain. So when you're like really getting in your head, you get stuck and like, I can't live with this, and it's getting worse and worse, right? And then, you know, you observe these emotions, because emotions always come and go. We can go in seconds from you know, being happy and content to something bad happens and we're pissed, or we are angry, or right, someone brings you the wrong order in the restaurant and you're like, oh man, always happens to me. And either you're someone who speaks up, or you're someone who's like, okay, well, whatever, I'm just gonna eat it, right? Depends on your personality, but in both ways, you're probably going to be angry or upset, or well, I don't know. There's many things, but it will always pass. And the big thing in the second one, that's why I led with original versus amplified pain. The big thing in diffusion, which is the second point that I want to start talking to you about as well, is learning to separate yourself from the thoughts and the emotions that are tied to your tinnitus, rather than being completely consumed by them. Because when you're completely consumed by them, you're creating so much more amplified pain that, of course, as I said already, the brain says, oh yeah, this is very terrible. This is really difficult. I can't really deal with this, right? So it's very important to understand that if you start practicing proper diffusion techniques that are working well for you individually, then you can separate yourself from these cognitions, so the thoughts in your head, and also the physiological reactions that you experience together with those cognitions. And why is this so important? Well, tinnitus is a benign body sound, but your brain makes it feel like it's super threatening, right? So tinnitus is an absolutely normal thing. It happens in 25 to 30% of the population. Most people with tinnitus are habituated. Some are not. I do believe, and I'm making a video and it's releasing soon, that I believe that everyone can habituate to tinnitus. So I do believe it's like super important that we understand the brain makes it feel threatening, and it's not your fault. It's not the brain's fault. It's just trying to protect you and spare you from harm. So that was trying to look for ways of doing something. It reacts, and you react as well, amplified pain more and more, and the cycle is complete. Your body and brain say, oh, this is terrible. We really must be doing something about this, and I'm not getting out of this. And, you know, these diffusion techniques, they might sound silly at first, and we've had a lot of them in the club over the years, from singing Let It Be by the Beatles, or, you know, in the voice of Let It Ring, you know, like stuff like that. It sounds very silly at first, but the background behind diffusion is that you start to establish a different emotion towards the thought and feeling around your tinnitus. And when you do that, you start changing the conditioning that you have towards your tinnitus that signals to your brain that tinnitus is a threat. And in essence, diffusion simply helps you create space between your thoughts and the way you think, relate, and feel about them. I always use the analogy like, yeah, you know, maybe I won the lottery, and then I would not have to sit here on a Wednesday afternoon explaining people on YouTube what my approach to tinnitus is, and eventually coaching people and bringing them onto the club and working with them. You know, but you know, maybe I have a million in the bank account from winning the lottery. That's a nice thought, right? Yeah, but it's not true. So that's a thought that makes me feel nice, but it's not true. So it doesn't really matter. The thought, I cannot live because of my tinnitus or with my tinnitus in this particular way, is nothing more than a string of words in your head, but they do something with you, which is a physiological reaction. In the end, it's neither true nor false. There's the reality is there's hundreds of millions of people with tinnitus, and most of them are habituated, and you know, they have bigger fish to fry than their tinnitus often in their life. So it is really important that we learn to diffuse from our thoughts. It doesn't mean that they're not valid. It doesn't mean that it's not painful. It just means that you can see them for what they are, a string of words in your head. And in acceptance and commitment therapy, we ask, is this thought telling me something useful? And is it driving me towards the life I want? Or is it not? And in the case of habituation, if it helps the conditioning of the brain to understand that tinnitus is a benign body sensation and nothing dangerous, then it's very useful, right? But if it is something that will keep you stuck in this reactive cycle and loop, then it is not very helpful. So it is in essence, and this is the third point that I was trying to make today, and I wanted to connect them all with with the amplified versus original pain first, the use of diffusion, and then the way that you realize what your individual cycle is, and then afterwards we're going into stress management a little bit, and then afterwards into sleep management, and then yeah, I think that's enough as well. I see there are not really any questions today either, so I think if we plow through all of these in the next 10 to 15 minutes, then that shall be enough for today. I got a little bit of a headache and I'm a little bit tired, so I'm gonna get my resources back together because I still have a little bit of editing to do for the Friday podcast episode, and want to take a rest of a slow afternoon. So let's talk about the cycle, your individual tinnitus cycle. So I've talked a little bit about breaking the cycle of constant attention and paying attention onto your tinnitus, the anxiety and frustration that keeps going up and down and fluctuating, and often with that your tinnitus also fluctuates, right? Which obviously always keeps tinnitus at the forefront of your mind because it seems like that's all you can think about, and it is all you can think about because you are kept in this vicious cycle of fight or flight where your brain eventually associates. I mean, there's tinnitus, it's independent, right? But your brain associates the fight or flight feelings in your body with tinnitus, right? Which is, although just a benign body sensation that you experience and hear, perceive in your ears or your brain, right? So it is really, really important to understand that that is the reason for why tinnitus is so painful. And it is that cycle in which your brain mistakenly takes the tinnitus as the highest threat level. That's why it constantly presents it to you. And that's why it's constantly like you need to be paying attention to it, right? So it is very, very important that, the more you attend to tinnitus and you indulge in this cycle, the more anxious you probably feel, and the more the brain will start to focus on it as well, right? And that's just leading you down the rabbit hole. And what we say also in acceptance and commitment therapy, this cycle can definitely be disrupted with very intentional value-based actions, right? So for example, doing things that you used to do despite the presence of your tinnitus, so that your brain can get some counter evidence that you can still do the thing that you thought that you weren't be able to do anymore. A big example is for many people like reading in silence, right? A lot of people say like, oh, I can't read in silence anymore. If only I could read in silence again. I would love that. That'd be so great. And I'm like, well, you're having the thought that you cannot sit down and read in silence anymore. And yes, you can't read in silence anymore if after 20 seconds you get up and you become frustrated about your tinnitus. But you haven't given yourself the chance to sit down, to acknowledge the presence of your tinnitus, and to read, and then to eventually be focusing on what you're reading, and eventually the tinnitus will drown into the background like you experience it in many other circumstances as well, right? And when you get this idea that that can happen, that the tinnitus does phase into the background, then very slowly but steadily, you will definitely feel that your brain gets it and you are getting better, and that tinnitus is not this big threat anymore, and you can do the things that really matter to you. So that is the thing that leads me to one of the practical steps that you can do in order to, identify and break your cycle. Realize where you're stuck. Is it like you're being hyper focused on your tinnitus all the time, or is it that you are avoiding your tinnitus at all costs, like always masking it, or sort of like running away from it? Like, where are you stuck in your cycle? And then introducing like small shifts in behavior to disrupt the loop, like acknowledge it and say like, oh yeah, there's my loop again. This is what I'm doing, and this is my avoidance action, or this is my hyper focus trying to somehow deal with my tinnitus and do something about it to make it better. But that's actually not helpful for me at the moment. So you engage in a meaningful activity while still having maybe that feeling or that thought. You know, and we have this in the club, and I want to show this to you for a second. Let me see whether I can share my screen. Hopefully that works better than last time. Yeah. Share my whole screen. There we are. Lovely. So what I have in here inside the club. So tomorrow we're starting with the buddy system. So tomorrow we everyone is going to get paired inside the club with another person. And then they're doing their challenge together. So we have a small wins challenge this month, as you can see in here. I don't want to talk too long about it, but we're reintroducing the buddy system. So everyone's going to be paired with another member. Yeah, you stay accountable to each other, you gain perspective, and you celebrate your progress. You can have weekly check-ins with your buddy. I'm going to give you prompts of what you can discuss and get going with your buddy. And you will help each other around the platform and discuss the things that have helped you the most in your habituation journey. And if you look at here, like all of these resources we've already done in all of these other years. But I want to get into something that I find is very important for breaking that cycle, which is the tinnitus habituation and choice point diagram. Okay, so when we talk about understanding the tinnitus cycle and diffusion, right, when we are hooked on our thoughts and feelings, we often go away from habituation. So we ruminate about the tinnitus, we avoid it, mask it all the time, we are resisting it, we want to fight it with everything we have, and therefore it's always at the forefront of our attention. It's super strong and prominent, although we exactly try to avoid that, right? That's the hooked path. We are hooked by our feelings or thoughts about our tinnitus. And that's definitely away from habituation because it increases your focus on your tinnitus. And in order to understand and improve on your cycle, you want to be unhooking from your thoughts and feelings as much as you can. You want to accept, not accept tinnitus. That's not true. You want to accept the thoughts and feelings that come with tinnitus because those are the ones that make you feel a certain way about your tinnitus, which is really feedbacking to your brain what your real problem is, right? Then you want to do mindful actions. You want to pick out in every moment, okay, what is it that I need right now in this moment? Because clearly I'm struggling, but it's okay for me to struggle. Everyone struggles with this at times. And if I unhook from these thoughts and feelings, because they might not always be true, I always say, like, look, if my tinnitus gets worse and if my bad ear, like I have a really bad ear, a deaf ear, and the ear with hearing aid and hearing loss and tinnitus, but if this ear with hearing loss and tinnitus also goes deaf, then I would technically be completely deaf. But you know what? What the heck? Like, a lot of people wear cochlear implants and you can still be able to hear. Of course, that doesn't mean I'm reckless with my hearing, but it means that, you know, the thought that, oh, my tinnitus is going to be unbearingly loud or I will not be able to hear anything anymore, is not scaring me. So I can unhook pretty easily, not always, but most of the times. And I can focus on value-driven steps. For example, I can say, okay, my tinnitus is loud, but I'm going to do this Q&A anyways, or I have a headache, but I can do this Q&A anyways, because it's important for me to share my knowledge with you guys out there and also do it for free. So it's accessible out there on the internet. And if people want to dive into more, they can always join my tinnitus club or do coaching with me. But the most important thing is for me to be able to share this with people so people start understanding this. Because the more often you unhook and do things toward habituation, the more you condition your brain to understand that tinnitus is in fact a benign body sensation, that it doesn't need to be upset and ruminating about the whole time. And I know this is not a quick fix. Definitely not, 100% not. But it is a long-term fix, which long-term leads to reduced anxiety, reduced worrying about your tinnitus, and reduced tinnitus in volume as well, guaranteed, 100%. The reason your tinnitus gets louder and louder is because your focus is higher and higher. And when your focus is higher and higher, you get more and more upset about it. Right. So this is the choice point diagram, hooking and unhooking. And for those of you who are in the club, you will find it in the daily habit tracker and then all the way down below at the choice point diagram. If you want to, you can print it out. And there are a few exercises inside how to use the choice point diagram in daily settings. And here's also a choice point diagram from the happiness trap. It's quite nice, and you'll be able to check that out here as well. Let me stop sharing my screen now. And no, not end stream. End screen sharing. That's what we wanted. Love it. Very nice. Okay, so that was a little bit about our club and about understanding the tinnitus cycle, understanding your individual cycle, then using the techniques of, understanding it, the original versus amplified cycle, using the diffusion techniques, and then, you're really going towards what lets your brain habituate to your tinnitus. And that, I think, is really, really important. So I see there are no more questions today. We go into managing stress and then into sleep very quickly. And then we are wrapping this live session up. If you've missed it, of course, it will be here as a recording on my channel, and I will put it into the club for all the club members as well. Managing stress. Stress in and of itself is obviously not something bad, right? Stress, as we refer to, most of us would say, okay, it's tightening of the muscles, increasing of the heart rate. It is a go signal, right? So it's simply the signal from our brain to our body, go, let's get active. And the problem is, if that becomes too chronic, that of course leads to huge amounts of energy expenditure, burnout, and so on and so forth. So managing stress, how can we manage stress? Especially with tinnitus, it's very important to mention that people feel constantly stressed because of their tinnitus. And of course, when we are constantly stressed, that drains our energy and resources a lot. So managing stress is essential, and I have a few ideas on how to do that. I am not a fan of saying you have to eliminate stress from your life, because then, everything in your life can be probably stressful, even the fun and good parts and the parts that make your life meaningful, like connecting with family and friends, going after a job that you love, might still be stressful. So it is impossible to eliminate stress. You have to live, right? Like, you can't hibernate in your bed the whole time, because then probably very likely you will become depressed, right? So it's important to manage stress, but not to set the wrong expectations about stress management, to say that you never have stress again. But something that I prefer and would be much more important for me is to manage your stress and find things that help you in de-stressing as well. Yeah. And that's different for everyone. Some people like to take walks. Some people like to do sports. Some people like to do meditation. Some people like to do hobbies. There are lots of ways in which you can de-stress and get into kind of like a flow state, or, we know that, for example, when we do strenuous exercise, even walking, the body can much better process the whole stress and the pent-up adrenaline inside the body. So it is true. And there's also proven studies, for example, that when we have high level of stress and cortisol, that sports and exercise helps to regulate the body's cortisol levels. Yeah. So, and what way you do that is not really important, but it is important to know that if you're dealing with tinnitus and you're dealing with a very, difficult form of tinnitus at this moment, and you feel constantly stressed, well, you need a lot more de-stressing than you would usually, right? So in your usual life, you tend to be stressed and things are difficult, and that's normal for everyone. But when additional stress comes on, such as tinnitus, it is incredibly important that we, get into this additional stress management program as well. And, I can share my screen once again, because I want to just show you guys a little bit of what I think can be examples of successful stress management. Not only here in the daily tracker do we say, like, okay, how to diffuse from difficult emotions, habituation, acceptance-oriented actions, social and support activities, and mindfulness practices, but we say daily rest and relaxation, and whatever is good for you, right? So yoga nidra is non-sleep deep rest, and it's actually not yoga, it's called yogic sleep, and it's guided body scans. And guided body scans that are designed to put you in a very deep state of relaxation. And when your nervous system goes into a very deep state of relaxation, the parasympathetic nervous system gets activated. We can see that the brain waves change, and your nervous system can reset. Yeah, so it doesn't matter whether you prefer yoga nidra, progressive muscle relaxation, some body scans, guided meditations, walking meditations. Simply, what does mean walking meditation? Simply really paying attention to what's going on in the outside world and not letting yourself be run away with your thoughts all the time, right? Because you get stuck in your thoughts. You can also just stay at home and be stressed about stuff. So it is very, very important that, you know, we have different ways of stress management, and everyone has different ways of stress management. Playing PlayStation or connecting with a friend. Someone said recently, I mean, I currently don't drink, but going out with your mates and having a few pints, that is stress management one-on-one. Connecting with other human beings so you don't feel as isolated, like here in the club, for example, that is stress management one-on-one. So it is very, very important that we feel like the stress that we're having is either meaningful, because then we can really like deal with it in an easier way, right? Because we say, okay, this stress is really okay, it's natural because I'm working on this, or this is family stress, and I'm willing to accept this stress because it's important for me, because it gets me further in my journey with my family or something like that. So it's not about eliminating stress, it's about managing it properly. And everyone will have their own ways of managing tinnitus and stress properly. I have some good books. I recently painted here, so I have to look at where all my different books are. But there's a great book on burnouts and managing stress by Emily Nagoski and Amelia Nagoski, and it's called "The Secret to Unlocking the Stress Cycle." And it's it's sort of like a little bit more for women, but I think it's applicable to human beings, to all human beings. But it's very good about how to unlock the stress cycle. Has some very insightful exercises in there, and to say like, okay, the biological stress cycle, what does it actually mean, and how you can get out of there. And spoiler alert, exercise is one of them. And managing stress will, of course, also determine your tinnitus habituation journey, because you already know that the more stressed you are, it's very likely that your tinnitus is louder, because the heightened perception, right, in your auditory cortex makes you more sensitive to noise. The more stressed we are, the more we become very selective in our attention. And the auditory cortex is probably, you know, overloaded with information at that point, and therefore your tinnitus might seem louder as well. It's just a hypothesis, but I think it's quite plausible. And so it is important that you find what ways of stress management is useful for you. There are many, many different forms of stress management out there, and it is important because it's not only for your personal health, for your mental health, but also in your life. It is so much nicer if you are not constantly stressed out. And I know that this is a little bit of a stretch, especially at the start and when tinnitus is very difficult, but it is something that you will in the long run assemble for yourself and really get better with. Cool. Right. And let's do the final point, tinnitus and sleep. And tinnitus and sleep is again something where I say, sometimes people come to me and say, weirdly enough, I have tinnitus, but I have no trouble sleeping. And then sometimes people come to me and say, I have tinnitus and naturally sleeping is super difficult. So I'm like, okay, very funny. Like sometimes people really struggle, and sometimes people are like, yeah, I sleep well, even though my tinnitus is there. I don't really care, you know. That's very, very interesting to me often. So I think that that in sleep, of course, it's rest and relaxation. The same thing we talked about stress management right now. When we talk about sleep, sleep is a form of stress management because your body needs it in order to rest and recuperate for the next day and manage the stress of the day. And sleep and tinnitus is again not the tinnitus, so not the physical existence of tinnitus keeps you awake, right? So there is no evidence whatsoever, 0% evidence, that tinnitus has the tendency to keep you awake. just because of the sound in your head. That might sound weird, but it's true, because there's no physiological evidence that a sound in your ear or brain, such as tinnitus, is in and of itself anatomically the culprit for keeping you awake. That would mean otherwise people with tinnitus wouldn't be sleeping ever, right? And you have people who are non-habituated and who deal with insomnia or sleeping issues despite their tinnitus, and you have people who are habituated who sleep absolutely fine. So everything points us into the direction that we again have to do it with a loop of negative emotional reactivity. And let me just quickly tell you how this works. The body falls asleep when the brain perceives that it's safe to do so. We are geared for survival, not for sleeping and not for happiness. So if the melatonin in our bloodstream, which is the sleepiness hormone, produced by the pineal gland in the brain, and teeny tiny cortex, a teeny tiny piece of the brain that releases melatonin into the bloodstream, depending on your circadian rhythm, when the light goes down, etc., in the evening, starts to produce melatonin, and cortisol and adrenaline are, of course, immediately able to, eliminate that melatonin from the bloodstream. Why? It takes you minimum often 10 to 30 minutes to fall asleep, but it takes you less than 10 seconds to wake up from sleeping when you hear something or when you're distracted. And this is because of the survival instinct. It's we humans, like nowadays, we don't really need to be woken up in the middle of the night because there is no imminent danger for most of us most of the time. But we still do at the slightest sounds, and it takes us a few minutes, for some people less, but for most people, minimum a few minutes until we're back asleep. And that's simply because of the survival mechanism. So what happens with tinnitus? Tinnitus, as we said, you start having the conditioning, like, because of my tinnitus, I can't sleep well. And because of that experience of how you feel the next day of not having slept well because of your tinnitus, you feel terrible. Very normal. I get it. I've been there as well. Absolutely. The problem is, however, not the tinnitus. It's the way you relate to your tinnitus, and then the not sleeping makes you feel the next day. And then you say, because of my tinnitus, I didn't sleep well. It's not entirely true. Because of my reaction to tinnitus, I didn't sleep well. Because my reaction to tinnitus released stress hormones such as adrenaline and cortisol that eliminated melatonin from my bloodstream. I wasn't feeling tired anymore. And that's why it is difficult for me to fall asleep. Now, when the levels of cortisol and adrenaline lower again in your body and the perceived threat is gone, then the melatonin can rise again and you can fall asleep. So the problem here, and I'm not tiring to repeat this, is not the tinnitus, not the physiological reality of tinnitus being present. The problem here is you reacting to your tinnitus in a particular way that eliminates or decreases the possible amount of circulating melatonin in your body, making it near impossible for you to sleep. And then out of that develops a habit that you think now tinnitus is culpable for you not sleeping. And then when you think tinnitus is culpable for you not sleeping, then of course the next day you feel very bad. The obsession about tinnitus gets even more intense, and that cycle sort of like continues and solidifies itself, right? It's like the normal insomniac cycle with tinnitus and people with tinnitus. And I can tell you, it's absolutely normal. It's absolutely normal. So what do we need to do? In fact, it's going to sound weird, but absolutely nothing. If you can accept the presence of your tinnitus when you are lying awake in your bed and still be comfortable rather than having the urge to fight something, right? I know sounds weird, but hear me out. It's the same thing with the reading, right? If you give up after 20 seconds, say, I really can't read because of my tinnitus, well, then there you have the evidence. You get up and you really have the evidence you can't read. But when you continue to sit and immerse yourself in the book, and then suddenly you have the evidence, oh, it is possible, right? Then your brain is like, well, maybe it is. And it's the same with sleeping. So when you toss and turn and say like, oh, I can't fall asleep because of my tinnitus, then yeah, you can't fall asleep because of your tinnitus. But when you simply lie awake and say like, oh yeah, my tinnitus is there. Yeah, I wish he wasn't, but he is here anyways. And I'm just going to rest and relax. And when your brain says, okay, I'm resting and relaxing despite the presence of my tinnitus, and of course, I'm saying in the long run, we would all love to sleep without sound therapy. I sleep with my hearing aid out and earplug in because I don't like to be woken up by my neighbors. And I sleep fine, right? Most of the time. Sometimes I don't sleep well, but that's normal. Everyone does. So it, again, is not the tinnitus that is your obstacle to better sleep. It is the way you respond and react to your tinnitus and how that impacts on your nervous system. And that obviously prevents you from falling asleep, because your brain doesn't know whether you're fighting a real intruder or a saber-toothed tiger in Stone Age theory, or that you're just upset about the presence of your tinnitus next to you. But again, there is no physiological factor limiting your ability to sleep despite the presence of your tinnitus. It's absolutely no problem to sleep well and soundly, haha, pun intended, soundly, despite the presence of your tinnitus. And one more resource that I want to show you guys. So if sleep is your thingy, if sleep is what is tricky for you, then we have a particular space here inside the club where I did an interview with my personal all-time favorite, Dr. Guy Meadows from London. He's a fantastic doctor who has perfected acceptance and commitment therapy for insomnia. And in this 1 hour and 14 minutes conversation, you can find a short 20-minute version on YouTube as well. But here's the full conversation, 1 hour and 15 minutes here in the My Tinnitus Club community. You can see that we talk about everything of how insomnia and tinnitus relate and are intertwined, and what you can do in order to get better sleep despite your tinnitus. And I'm the best example, and many of my clients and the people I've worked with are. Most people go back to sleeping normally, and I absolutely know it feels horrible not to be able to sleep well. I've been through that as well. Listen, I've been through tinnitus myself. I've been through living with a deaf ear, a hearing aid, and loud tinnitus. I've been through insomnia, tinnitus and non-tinnitus related. I've now added depression and burnout to the list last year. Still tired sometimes, so I'm going slower. But look, already 50 minutes of live stream nearly, although I wanted to end after 30. But yeah, I'm going there. And to all the questions, Dr. No and UH, yeah, please be on time next time. Sorry, I said that I was only going to do 30 minutes. I will be super quick with my answers, but I said that I would only going to do half an hour, and please be on time for the lives. It's something I do absolutely for free to answer your questions. So if you do enjoy them, please be on time to ask your questions. Yeah, could put up shorts on your YouTube channel on mindfulness. The more ideas on it, the better. Much respect, sir. Yeah, I mean, I can do some more mindfulness stuff. I think there's enough mindfulness out there. That's why I'm key focusing on acceptance and commitment therapy. And UH is my program, including sound therapy. I do have sound therapy, and for example, the digital relief package. If you click at the link up there, I have a digital relief package. Let me just, while we're at it, do that as well. Share this with you. So when you go here, digital relief package, starter kit, it's 10 euros. Let me show you what's inside. Relief digital. There's a starter package, and I have sound therapy files, like 10 hours of waterfall, 10 hours of rain sounds, 10 hours of bonfire, that you can play if you don't want the YouTube ads and stuff like that. YouTube inserts them automatically. That you can purchase here, this 10 hours digital tinnitus relief package that comes with learning videos, 2 very cool videos, introduction to tinnitus habituation, like 10 and 20 minutes long, some worksheets, your tinnitus roadmap to habituation, where you can fill in some stuff and really talk about, you know, how you can put this into practice and get habituated. Daily practice worksheet of what you can do on a daily basis to get better. And then also some next steps of when you've completed everything in this package of what I think can be beneficial to you. And then, of course, you can decide for yourself whether that's something you want to do. And there are also some success stories in here. And so my program inside My Tinnitus Club is not so much based on sound therapy, because I believe in the long run, it is important that everything that we've talked about before, is that we teach the brain that it has nothing to fear from tinnitus. Very, very important. So therefore, I believe that in the short term, for sleep and, you know, for managing the ultimate distress, sound therapy can be a valid form. But I believe in the long run, sound therapy can be even detrimental, because it keeps us avoiding something that at its most basic doesn't have to be avoided, because it's a benign body sensation that is as normal as your heartbeat and your breath. And I know I'll probably get a lot of comments like, oh no, but tinnitus is terrible. And it's not. Like, yeah, it's what you make it. And if you force it and if you keep on struggling, that is your choice, absolutely. But you don't have to. It wouldn't be smart to struggle against your breath or your heartbeat either, so don't. All right. Nearly 1 hour of live streaming. You guys know I like to do the monologues, eh? Crazy stuff. All right, check out the links and the resources up there. Join us at www.mytinnitus.club for a free trial. We would love to have you there. Tomorrow we kick off the body system. If you want to be part of the body system, you can join us in the club. You can sign up to my coaching waitlist. If you want to be coached by me in one-on-one coaching sessions, you can sign up to the coaching waitlist. I have playlists here on YouTube for each and every step that you could be in. If you start with your tinnitus, if you want to hear from people who got better, if you want to get a one-on-one on what tinnitus habituation can look like, then we have these different playlists. And of course, and this I share with you frequently as well, I have a 4-day mini email course where you get a goodie email every single day into your inbox, talking about some concepts and strategies that can help you. And you can sign up for that at tinnitus-course.com, or simply clicking on this link that I pinned and I have under most of my videos here on my YouTube channel. Yeah, thanks for making it, guys. Thank you for everyone to join here today. To all the community members like Daniel, Karen, and Mark. Looking forward to see you tomorrow in the Buddy System meeting. And to everyone else watching, thank you. I hope it's been useful. All the stuff that we've talked about, I hope it was relevant and useful for you. It will be tomorrow on my YouTube channel, or later on, however long YouTube needs to process this stuff. And yeah, I'll see you in the next live. I will see next week. I'm not sure if we do a live. Maybe we'll skip it next week. But I want to make sure that I minimum have 1 live stream a month. I've already done 3 this month. So maybe we'll skip next week, but we'll see. But you will always find us at www.mytinnitus.club. absolutely my pleasure. I hope that all of you guys are well. You know where to find me. And I'm signing off, and I'll see you next time. All right. Bye, guys. Lovely to see all of you. Bye.